partnership with Positive Psychology Association of Kenya, PPAK, as part of our collaborative mission, which aims to inspire resilience, reflection, and well-being in later life. We have already had 2 weeks ago, a fortnight, we had the first webinar, Change and Continuity in Later Years of Life Towards Well-Being. Today, we are going to hear about the cognitive challenges and opportunities towards wisdom. And after 2 weeks, we shall have social-emotional arrivals and departures towards altruism. And after 2 weeks from that, we shall have integration of life narratives and faith towards transcendence. Our objectives for the webinar today is to define the concept of well-being and examine how cultural perspective influence understanding of the stages of life, particularly in later years. Two, to analyze the later years of life through psychological models of lifelong development, highlighting the dynamics of change and continuity, to explore practical approaches and interventions aimed at enhancing well-being in older adults by integrating cultural, psychological, and developmental insights. I would like to introduce our speaker today, our guest speaker, Dr. Beatrice Churu. Churu is a Kenyan Catholic laywoman, a mother of 3 young adult children. Wairimu is a member of the Christian Life Community, a lay association in the Catholic Church, and of the Catholic Women's Council, a worldwide Catholic women's group on synodality in the Church. She's also a faculty member of Tangasa University in Nairobi. Together with Professor Selvam, she is a founding board member of the Positive Psychology Association of Kenya. Her areas of research, publication, and community interventions are marriage and family life, psychological well-being for youth, for family, and for the workplace, spiritual well-being, and African culture. She is a character coach and a character coach trainer. She's also the director of Tunza Utu Education Service, which is a family and community well-being training organization. She's a well-versed lady with a long experience in her life. So Dr. Beatrice Wairimu, welcome.
Thank you, Sister Akinata. And thank you to CASAK for inviting Positive Psychology Association to this partnership. And you correctly say we recognize ourselves in a common mission here to promote well-being. Very grateful that we had such a great beginning last time. and with a very good input from Professor Selvam. I hope that we can build on it today, focusing a little bit more specifically on the cognitive dimension. Otherwise, I just want to commend CASAK. I think it's about time that we had focus on well-being, on aging as such. And increasingly, as our cultures change, everybody in society needs this focus. So you are leading in the right direction. Asanteni sana. So I'm hoping that I can be heard, sister. So you will be my manager.
Yeah, we hear you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, let me see that I can share screen. And I hope you can see my screen. Can you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so in this series, then we begin today to go into a bit more specificity. But as I said, we build on the great foundation we had last week. Today, we are talking about cognitive challenges and opportunities. As Father Selvam said last week or 2 weeks ago, in positive psychology, we want to focus also on the good, especially on the good, because it is where the resources are with which we can make good our lives. So not to ignore the resources. As I like to tell the story of the boy, I think it's a Native American story about the boy with his grandfather. The grandfather tells the boy that inside you there are two wolves, one bad one and one good one, and they are constantly fighting. And the boy asks, Grandpa, who wins? Which of them wins? And of course, like a boy, the boy wants to know the winning end of the story. And he says, it is the one that you feed. So we want to choose to feed the good wolf within us, not ignoring the bad wolf is so far as that can be, but actually mining every experience to see where is goodness, what can we work with towards a better space. So karibuni sana. As we said last time, aging has elements of continuity with our ongoing lives, such as they have been. It is one fabric, one life, but it has seasons. And it is the seasons that bring us to this round piece where we are at the aging level. And I'm not too sure we agreed where aging begins. I remember some people saying all the way from birth, etc. But I want to imagine that most of what we are talking about pertains to people in their 60s and above. But you feel free to pitch your start point where you feel it fits best. It is true that if you have good habits, and habit is an important word in our lives, in psychology, but also especially in life. If you cultivate good habits, then you are able to carry them forward to every season of your life, at least to a certain extent. And this is where continuity is so important. And this is where cultivating certain elements of what we want to be like, even when we grow up, if you like, can start at whatever age we are at. And know that whatever it is that you are cultivating now will most likely deliver some results in your old age. Nevertheless, there are also changes. And in some cases, the changes may be seen to be degenerative or loss of certain capacities. But we also know, and we are beginning to discover more and more, that we can have improved elements, as was said, improved well-being. Sometimes we lose some faculties or some capabilities, but become so much more focused and do so well in others. So I hope we'll be able to see some of that. So that change or discontinuity. And hopefully that by looking at both of them, we can see elements of how we can be innovative, more active, more in terms of being agents of transformation, personal and community. And I know that some of you are here because you take care of older people, but some of us are here because we are also no longer so young. So we are older people ourselves, and all those positions are valid. Of course, well-being in aging is multifaceted. It is not just the cognitive dimension. It has various others, as we saw last week. Physical elements, cognitive, emotional, social elements, etc. So even as we focus, let us remember it is not a fragmented reality. It is within the context of the whole of the being of the person. So I want to ask us, what do we understand by cognition? I've given us some pictures there that could help us. What is going on if we are to analyze what is involved in the processes of cognition? And just to get to hear, I know that we can't have everyone talk, but we would really like to be interactive in this workshop, in this conversation, so that we also learn together. So that I often say, especially today, we say we learn more by speaking or by expressing ourselves and articulating better what we think. So I don't want to be the only one who is talking. I hope that all of us can have a chance to express ourselves. But if we all open our mics, it will get too noisy. So please use the chat box and tell us what elements are there in cognition as far as you are concerned. What is it that impacts, that is part of the cognitive process? Sister Aquinata, you will let us know if some answers come so that we also see that others are on board.
Okay. I will.
Thank you.
They're still thinking about it. They're seeing new pictures. They're seeing the bulb, so they may not even understand the bulb on the head.
Yeah, maybe the picture is making things more complicated rather than helping us. It is just
Somebody is bringing, when they look at all the three, there's comprehension.
Comprehension.
Then there is thinking, organizing.
Thinking and organizing.
And then there is insight.
Wonderful. Very good. Very good. All those from one person?
No. Different people.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Yes.
Thank you.
I am surprised that we did not hear something that I thought would come very, very fast.
Somebody has written, Catherine has said, I think cognition is the process of how we think, learn, remember, and understand things. It includes mental activities like paying attention, remembering facts, solving problems, making decisions, and using language. It is how my brain takes in information, makes sense of it, and uses it. And another one says decision making and judgment.
Okay. Very good. Some people are very fast writers.
Yes.
And very comprehensive. I am glad all these answers, by the way, are very correct. It is all that goes into thinking.
Yeah, someone says also it's also memory, then language skills.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So all these are involved in the cognitive process. And we are going to, and it is very comprehensive, the answers that you gave. And what we are then going to look at is just to see why it is of concern as we are aging, identify some positive steps that can be taken to maintain and improve cognition, because all those things you mentioned are so critical to living life. So what can we do to keep them going? I was expecting to hear memory much earlier than I did, but that is okay. It means we are actually looking at a bigger picture right early. Later on in the presentation, we shall look at a specific positive psychology advice, if you like, on strategies for cultivating wisdom. Very good. So as you said before, it is mental functions of paying attention, for example. It's multidimensional. It takes very many aspects. All that the operations of the brain, especially the ones that are to do with the middle brain and the frontal cortex. That's paying attention, thinking, trying to understand, making sense of stuff of our world, learning new things or making new meaning, remembering, solving problems, making decisions. So it's multidimensional. It is not just about memory. Of course, very often when we talk about aging, cognitive aging, most people are thinking about loss of memory, but it could be any part of these, any or combinations of these elements of cognition. Because cognition is what enables us to make meaning, to accomplish goals, even to make goals, and to basically negotiate our life in the world, in our environment. It is critical, therefore, for day-to-day life, even to come to this meeting today, to remember that it's at this time. Just before the class, they had to teach me how to use Teams. I had never used it before. It takes some elements of cognition to just learn new skills and to use them and to. So when we talk about cognitive aging, I want to ask your intervention again. When we say cognitive aging, given that we have defined cognition, what feelings does it elicit in you? What does it make you think of, but especially feel? Again, we can use the chat box. Feelings are quick to write. Let us not filter them too much. What does it trigger? What comes out first? Sister.
She has muted herself.
Sister, you are muted.
But we can't hear. We can't hear whoever is speaking. Has she muted herself?
Sister, you're not muted actually, but yeah. We can't hear whoever is. For some reason, sister, we can't hear you, but I can see in the. Okay, now you are muted. Nevertheless, I do see one comment here and there, scared. For some reason, someone says she feels scared, and she even writes it twice. But decline of cognitive ability, what does it make you feel, Peter? When we have, that's the idea. That's what would be happening. We may lose some of those faculties. And you may even have experienced someone who is in the process of not having their mind as active or as able as it used to be. What does it make us feel? Are we all agreeing with Maggie that it is scary? Or are there other feelings? So interestingly, we are coming up with scared, worried about the loss of mental functionalities. We are worried because it could have crazy implications. Yes. Any other feelings? Okay, we shall go on. Cognitive aging is a long life process. It doesn't start when we grow old, but obviously it accelerates. It is not a disease. It's really more like a condition or a state. But in some cases, of course, it does become illness. It can be, for example, from injury, and and it can lead to very high levels of dysfunction in the life of a person. But nevertheless, we are not normally trying to say at what level are we saying that you are now in cognitive aging. It possibly, they say that cognitive development is at its peak in our 20s and at 30s. The rest of the way is rather the downhill, but it may accelerate more in the later 50s, 60s, and obviously going forward. It is a concern. As you said, it is scary. It may be worry some of us. It may worry us because we fear the decline of memory and the decline of the ability to make decisions. It worries people whether these declines are signs of neurodegenerative disease, especially Alzheimer's, which has somehow assumed a lot. It's like a rock star in the in the conversations of degenerative diseases of the mind or aging. Just about anyone who is losing memory, we begin to talk about the onset of Alzheimer's. It is not always correct, but we tend to have assumed a very high level of scaring people. Now, why are we afraid to lose cognition or cognition ability? Because if we lose cognition, we may also lose independence. And we are in a culture today where independence really, really matters. It's been possibly being something praised all the way from childhood in most cultures today. Not the same level, obviously, and there will be differences in cultures. But independence, loss of independence is for some very, very scary, and increasingly for many. Also because a lot of people live almost anonymously or alone, or in any case, the loss of independence is frightening. And we think that with the loss of cognitive ability, cognitive skills, or cognitive agility, we will find ourselves reduced in the quality of life and of our health. And yes, sometimes that is also true. It was interesting in looking at some of the literature that women seem to fear it more than men. I don't know whether you agree that women fear loss of cognitive abilities more than men. This is what one study found. And that Americans, where a lot more research has been done on this, they are more afraid of Alzheimer's and dementia than they are of cancer. Again, studies have their limitations, but it's interesting. And you might ask yourself, would that be our situation? It's not a competition or a comparison. This is neither here nor there. But on the other hand, you can see it kind of gives you a gauge of the kind of way we look at cognitive aging and its impact. If anybody knows why women may be more likely to fear loss of cognitive ability than men, I'm interested to know, or if you differ in your views. It's not just a concern for the individual, obviously. Partly why we are here is because we care for our loved ones, family members, living sometimes in different countries, and the aging person doesn't have the immediate support of family. And even when they are close, they know that it is challenging. So that, again, research that's done predominantly in the West shows that 40% of people who have aged parents or relatives are worried that their 65 years and over proteges may not be able to manage their finances, for example. And managing finances is an important skill in the world of today. And we will see a little bit why in a moment. Now, let's look at some common notions about cognitive aging, or, most people, as I said earlier, think of it as being Alzheimer's or at least being limited to the area of loss of memory. But the fear of Alzheimer's, or the rock star status of Alzheimer's in this, has come around to be the way people conceive cognitive aging, and people see it as having causing stigma in their lives, and forget, any positive impacts. And we will be looking at some positive impacts later on, some gains, if you like, or while we are aging. And while we are aging and we cannot help some of it, we might as well take the gains. So among the gains, which we shall elaborate a little further, is increase in wisdom, and hopefully we shall see how do you refine that or make best use of it, not accelerate, but leverage that. The ability to think logically sometimes actually increases and improves, especially perhaps as people reduce the areas in which they are engaged, then they are more focused in the areas in which they actually do engage. Then greater ability to regulate emotions, which automatically will lead to more comfort with self, more comfort with reality. Last time when we were here, Father was speaking about his senior companion who was able to withstand, disorder that perhaps a younger person struggles to put up with. There is a certain mellowing that comes with aging, and it does give us comfort. Now, there are some notions of successful aging, and sometimes when we talk about successful, it may mean that someone else is not succeeding, they're aging badly. And when we put value judgments on these things, it may make it a little bit more difficult. When we talk about normal aging, it may have connotations of abnormal aging. Nevertheless, you can say maybe more difficult aging, but the point being, can we make it a better and easier process as we go along? As we focus on brain health, because cognition is about the brain, the brain of the aging person, we want to note that, first of all, it's a lifelong process. The neuroplasticity is a lifelong process. Our brain keeps on adapting, and as we make meaning, it makes new connections. So there's potential for older adults to strengthen and keep up their cognitive abilities. That's not to say that we are not also losing some ground. We are losing ground, and that also happens in the lifelong process. But the growing also continues through the life process. It is also individualized. Everybody's journey is personal. Some people will have degeneration of the brain in one part, different from another in a different section of the brain, and the consequences, given that the parts of the brain have different functions, will be different in different people. Our environment, our genetic makeup, our lifestyle, the experiences of our life, be it education, trauma, etc. So it's not something we can generalize altogether. Like you've got 5 aged persons in your community or 5 aged people in the family, and we kind of think of them, or obviously we shall be able to see that they are quite different, the one from the other. They may have some similarities, of course. The one element that research seems to show that can predict the way a person is aging or how fast they're aging is the working memory capacity. The memory of being able to do certain things right now in our lives. When the working memory capacity degenerates very fast, then we are likely to go down quicker And the model of cognitive health is the ability to maintain optimal cognitive function. Now, again, optimal is denoted by quality of life, especially from the subjective perspective. Is the person satisfied with their life? Are they well? even if perhaps things are, they are doing less than they used to be able to do. How is this aging helping them to negotiate their reality at the moment? So this is the cognitive process. Let's look a little bit at the aging brain. I'm seeing that my script is changing. I hope you can still make some sense of it. It's changing. It has changed by itself. Some of this is not what I chose, but hopefully it's still a little legible. The aging brain, some of its characteristics is that it changes its structure, just as it changes throughout life. Like any other part of the body, as we are aging, because the brain is a part of the body. It just so happens that it's like the capital command center, but it's a part of the body. And if chromosomes are shortening, as we were saying last time, then in the liver, in the kidneys, in the rest of the body, they are shortening also in the brain. And so that has, just to be mindful of that, and to see it as normal and not let the fear overwhelm us, but see what we can do with this. As the brain ages, it changes in ability to function. These changes are different over time. They are a way of adapting. For example, you may have a decline in the speed of processing information in older people. It's fairly common. That's something they used to do quicker and understand more, or it would seem that their capacity was faster, but now it is no longer as fast as it used to be. They may become weaker in some elements, but some elements remain very sharp. For example, someone who is slow processing information, but they are able to very quickly decipher stress in the face of a grandchild. Yeah, the life experience stands to them and somehow helps them to make. So neuroplasticity, as we said, continues. Even as we lose some ground, we gain some. Some older persons may develop dementia, which is neurodegenerative as the parts of the brain degenerate. There isn't enough understanding of these degenerative diseases to be able to speak very confidently about them, but we can say that they are a function of the brain losing some of its abilities, and they can lead therefore to significant loss of independence when you are no longer able to do what you used to be able to do. What would be the impact? As we said, it may affect your memory, decision making, as we said earlier, judgment, like we'll give you an example shortly of driving, because it is, when we come to that, we shall look at it. The speed at which we process it, that will be one of the impacts, one of the possible impacts of aging. I apologize that some of the script is not visible, as moved to a different thing, and it affects the ability to live independently. Why? Because if we forget, for example, if our memory or our processing of information is such that we lose ground on our sense of identity, then we are going to find it more and more difficult to manage our lives by ourselves. It's not the only reason, obviously, but one of the characteristics or one of the possible impacts of aging of the brain is losing a sense of our identity. We have heard people say people no longer know who they are in very extreme cases, but it can come slowly and we forget some elements of ourselves, and therefore we may not treat ourselves as we ought or we normally would. We may make poor decisions. For example, as we are saying, when someone is driving, they may have a poor assessment of the distance between the car they are driving as they pull out into the road. They may be assisted by life experience, but several other parts of their system are also aging. So your eyes, for example, the eyes are aging. We may not make very good judgment. So much as sometimes we succeed because of experience, we are very good at this. I know a woman who makes mats and baskets, and she makes extremely beautiful baskets. And she's very aged and not managing very many other things, but for some reason she's managing to make very beautiful mats. So you can see habit is standing to her, but she may not have a good sense of how much material should she buy to be able to make. She may be losing some of those finer details. And then it depends on how serious the activity the person is involved in is, that they may be able to carry on with it or not. We find that some of the things we used to be able to do when we were younger, like multitasking, are no longer possible. Maybe because we are more focused. Some people have said there's a whole debate about multitasking. Some people say multitasking is a lie, that nobody actually really does. You just do 2 things badly or 3 things badly, and that we can have a conversation on that. But an older person is more likely, perhaps whatever they get into, they are really engrossed, and because their memory is also perhaps failing, they may not be able to roll with several things at the same time. On the other hand, some of them, as we said, there are differentiated journeys. Some people have difficulty keeping focused on one thing for a long time. And I just wonder about, for example, the impact of this smartphone use on an aging brain. When we are excessive about it, it may really defray our ability to focus on anything, because it's already a fragile, or a brain that's getting fragile. Now, it may affect other elements of health because it's a command center. We may forget to take our meals. We may we forget that we did eat and take on too many meals in a day, because it's not the command center is not right. It may also influence our social participation. We find ourselves withdrawn. It could be an impact of degeneration, or an impact of brain aging, the aging brain. It can be a positive choice, but sometimes it is a withdrawal that can be extreme, or perhaps not very helpful to us. Ultimately, of course, if it goes on and on, it can become a point where we find we are not able to decide when we need help. And now, if we are, and depending on our culture, of course, we may find that yielding to the need for help is very difficult and very scary, and therefore we lose our independence almost in spite of ourselves, rather than collaborate or understand the process of what's happening to us. So our reflexive thinking may itself be affected, and that becomes difficult. I was giving us the example of driving. I really don't like this script, and but you put up with it for today. Some findings about driving, that someone who is people who are over 70, and this is a study done by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration in the US, people who are over 70 would be more likely to have certain kinds of accidents. And if they are 80, that possibility even increases even more. Now, if the brain is keeping good, or if we have a good sense of reflexivity and a good sense of community around us, perhaps we are receiving the feedback we need. Some of you might know a religious brother from the US who used to speak about his mother, who was in her 90s and was still able to drive. But every time when he went home, she would put him in the car, and she would ask him, "Tell me, am I okay? Can I keep driving, or do you think I should stop?" So I want to imagine that she would take that feedback from others as well, meaning that there is a sense of awareness and flexibility regarding the level of independence if people feel safe. If they don't feel safe, yeah. And so we have the caregivers often have, and you can put this in your own context in other examples, caregivers often have the big challenge of negotiating, giving them the dignity of autonomy as much as they have, as much as they can, but not letting them be in danger, endangering themselves. It's a delicate tightrope to walk when you are caring for people who are having compromised ability to care for themselves. Nevertheless, we have to create safe spaces, and we need to make that, I think, habitual from early on in our age. Safe spaces that people can actually receive feedback and feel that they are okay and that they are cared for. I hope most of us perhaps here are religious, that our communities are such spaces where we can actually feel cared for. And if we are not, we can begin to see how do you cultivate that so that people don't have to be forced, but they can be assisted to understand where they are. Sister, I'd like to ask whether we have any questions coming or any comments. I'm sorry that I'd like to change these headings if you give me a minute. In the meantime, sister, can you check, please? Yes. I invite comments of any kind related to what we've said so far. I feel honored when people respect me. That is any comment from participants. I am sorry, I don't seem to be able to change this, but we shall put it back online. I see some responses. I feel honored when people respect me for my age. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Lucy. Professor Sahaya says about driving, you wonder about the ethics of driving when someone is having poor reflexes. So we've got to help them to understand that surely they can no longer drive. But how receptive are they? How are we going to take care of their self-esteem? Obviously, self-esteem may not be as important as their safety and the safety of other people on the road. On the other hand, sometimes you see people left to drive or do certain things for so long, and then we have to kind of force them out of it. So is it possible to negotiate this in a better way, to begin to negotiate early, or to build a culture of seeking feedback and checking ourselves so that, it doesn't have to be forced on us, or people know that when I come to my 60s, 70s, some few things I will be required to just keep, but especially creating a culture where people feel safe to take that kind of feedback. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going just to go back. And I will try to tell you what the headings are saying, even if they're not as good as I'd like. Okay. Yes, this one is about the influence of the social setting or culture, the family, the religious community, but also the culture, the African culture or whatever it is, the neighborhood. There is a lot of evidence to show that sociocultural influences on perception of aging are quite strong. It's our culture tells us, and now you have to find out what is that culture of yours. Is it your home culture? Is it your African culture? Is it your religious community, religious order culture? But they tell us what to expect of old age, and what to almost fear, or what is successful or unsuccessful aging. So already we kind of cultural stereotype. We create stereotypes about aging, and those stereotypes or other cultures carry certain ideas about aging, and then people take them on, they internalize them even as they grow. So that you have observed older people than yourself treated in a certain way, you have treated people in a certain way, and you may be expecting the same, or hoping to escape, depending on what it is, to escape some of those similar things. Those expectations can significantly affect how an older adult's cognitive, performs cognitively, how they take care of their cognitive health, even how long they live, because our social sense can be very, very important. Now, in some cultures, independence is really underscored. And so the loss of independence is something to be terrified about. We feel threatened that our memory is going, and we can become very reactive. Whereas some other cultures, you are actually aware that at some point you are no longer going to be in charge of certain things, and you almost look forward to it. I have met a woman recently who had to go for, it was just an experience. I was with the daughter, and they met in a town, and they were going to have a conversation, but the old lady says, while we are here, I might as well get my blood pressure and various other vitals checked. So the daughter had to go in, take her there. The old lady did not even ask, and it could be in light jest, but it can also be, and she did not ask who will pay. What, she says, at this stage of her life, those are not her cares. She is happy to be taken care of, and she take whatever she can get. Now, that can be that your culture prepares you. It prepares you for loss of independence, and you see it as a good thing. It's not exactly a loss. It is a gain of care, a gain of certain privileges, right? So the cultures, I don't know what your culture has predisposed you to expect in old age. Ask yourself, what has your culture? And ask yourself, what culture is that? If it could be of the religious community, it could be of the family, or it could be just the contemporary world in which we live. What is it predisposing you to expect in old age, for old age? And it influences also how we care for older people. The kind of services we render them, and the attitudes we hold towards them. Now, I think this study is done in the US. It's another example, a bit like the driving, but I felt it is very close to some of what we experience here. Consumer decisions. Very many old people are taken advantage of when it comes to consumer decisions. They are victimized. They can be. They say there's a 14% prevalence of victimization in a sampled a lot of people. It is, I think, the last bullet, the last square tells you it's likely to be much higher, and that's the US, because there is little reporting. When older people have been cheated out of money, they may not report. They may be embarrassed, or they have been, they buy something, they forget they bought it. Tomorrow it's advertised to them again. They buy another one. And sometimes you come to the house and you find they have so many of these things. They may be embarrassed. They may not report that they were taken advantage of. Yeah? So what kinds of financial or consumer decisions are they cheated about? Like fake subscriptions. With now in the world of telemarketing, there can be so many of those. I think there is, even in the last 1 month or two, a huge increase in the amount of telemarketing possibilities. And if that keeps coming to an older person, you can imagine. And if they're struggling with one thing or another, they can easily get duped. Now, who are perpetrators? Who is deceiving or misleading older people? 51% of these were strangers. No too surprising. But guess what? 34% were family and friends and neighbors. People who know you well, people who know you have means, are likely to lead you into a situation where you purchase stuff that you don't need, or you are, you get into a betting ring or something. So what is causing this? The study shows cognitive decline, but also depression. They are trying to elevate their life. They're trying to pull themselves out of sometimes situations. They're hoping to sort something out. Social isolation, and of course, low financial literacy. Can you relate? Is this anything that's close to our situation? And the consequences, sometimes huge losses. This study found that $2.9 billion annually was lost from aged persons through bad consumer decisions. Yeah? Other consequences will include decline in mental health, reduced confidence, and etc. Decline in mental health might include more depression and a lot. Okay, so what are we saying? That older people can be very vulnerable. They are more vulnerable. I underscore more in the sense that I think pretty much everyone is vulnerable to abuse by markets, but they may be more vulnerable because they may also not understand the technology in use. And the ability to make decisions on what they ought to purchase can be highly compromised. They can be targeted by marketers because often older people have the money. It is known they have the resources. Yeah, and so people will try and get, and you have seen how sometimes there have been those scams even about love life when they are lonely, and people want to be their friends, and they enter into dating apps and have all these fake people who just want money out of them from across the planet. So this kind of exposure makes them much more vulnerable. But it's not all bad news. It's not all bad news. There are some good news, and I want to move more towards the good news piece of this conversation. That degeneration is the wrong word. Aging, cognitive aging may actually present an opportunity to cultivate a different level of relationship with oneself and even with others. I think that was elaborated quite well in the last presentation, there where people can actually make choices that they may have time in addition. They are not able to do too many things, but then what they do, they may be able to do a lot better. Of course, we shall talk about wisdom and knowledge increasing with old age. It is not automatic, but it's certainly old age is a contributor. One of the contributing factors to wisdom. And we say we can't have wisdom. It's very unlikely without an experience of life. So this is a good thing, right? Then studies also show that happiness follows a U-shaped curve. And I've explained the U-shaped curve in the gray box on the right. That is to say, we tend to be full of happiness and for adulthood, right? Young adults, they are very optimistic, almost too optimistic, not aware of enough of the dangers. They have so much strength and all that. And then midlife in the 40s and the 50s, the children are young, the financial burdens are many, and we tend to have a decline in well-being during those years. But then nothing lasts forever. Those children grow up regardless, one way or the other. And, we begin to mellow and to soften and to see the beauty of life in the older years. So we end up being able to better regulate ourselves emotionally, to accept life's outcomes. Not everybody, obviously, but it is something that can actually is done even for people who perhaps we are not too happy with what was happening in their life, but they integrate, as we saw from Erickson's model. And we focus on meaningful relationships and experiences. So happiness can assume this U-shaped curve. Lower levels of stress, worry, anger, etc. So how do we support the aging brain? To support the aging brain, what are some of the things that we can do to support the aging brain? There are some commonly understood strategies. For example, taking care of ourselves even before we get old. Because what we practice, we become. We're talking when we are younger, we do things, but we are older, that's what we are, right? So the idea of continuity, we prepare for a good old age. Of course, for some of us, it needs to be changed if we want to improve. For example, to be more regular in our sleep. If we haven't had a good, to take physical exercise, physical movement is important. Why? Because remember, the brain is part of the body. It needs blood flow. When blood flows around the body, we are generally in a better shape, including the brain, stronger brain cells. Exposure to varying environments, because it's environments that help us to engage, to ask questions, to observe. So if you stay in one room all the time or in the house all the time and you don't get out, it compromises the care for the brain. If it can be helped, we would hope that people can move, hear more. Of course, curated. We need to curate what we absorb, even ourselves being younger. But nevertheless, taking in information through the senses. When we take a walk, observing what is happening is good for the brain. It stimulates the brain. It helps us to ask questions. It helps us to understand reality more deeply, to keep the process of synapses ongoing. One way of building, this is a quote from a study in 2023 in Ireland, and the study says that one way of building cognitive reserve may be to structure the environment. To structure the environment to encourage lifelong engagement, because lifelong learning, healthier brain, right? So if we can have an environment that promotes engagement, then we are going to do better. They're saying, and this is the West, that pharmacological cure, medicines for dementia, for example, are not so reliable. They remain elusive. Sometimes we say feed people vitamins, feed people. They may have other advantages, but so far we have not been able to prove the impact on brain. It's not something that scientists can say directly. But physical exercise, social engagement, and various elements of cognitive stimulation are always beneficial to the brain. The traditional wisdom, if you like, of cardiovascular health, control cholesterol, eat better, manage weight, not smoke, helps the brain. These show positive correlation to brain health. Research has shown over and over positive correlation to brain health. How do we get our aged persons to embrace this? How can we, as we age, do that? Other things that we can do to support brain health is keep up interests. For example, reading. The age of the book is always it's not finished. Some of us love to read books, stories a lot, or play games. The older people should be encouraged to keep those interests and provided for with the resources they need, if we can provide at all, the resources to be able to read, to be able to play the games. We encourage writing. Writing is not so much necessarily for professional purposes or for publication, but writing helps to focus one's thoughts and what we think is important. We can use other forms of self-expression, obviously, to do the same, but the point is not just to leave our ideas in the loose. Those of you that write, and I'm sure that would be pretty much all of us, when you write, you find that you get to understand your own thinking better. Or when you paint, I'm not a painter, I have no idea how that, but it sure is a way of externalizing our questions, our meanings, our search. And so writing is to be encouraged, or speaking or having conversations, meaningful conversations. The additional benefit, of course, is that emotionally as we find meaning, or we are engaged with meaningful questions, we feel better about ourselves, and that has ripple effects on our cognitive well-being. Engaging the bigger questions of life. I think I took this from the writing of Father Selvam, and I think it's a brilliant idea that ask yourself as an older person, or as we grow older, what do you think? What might be the solutions to some of the bigger questions of the world today, or of your community today? How might we have solutions to some of the challenges we are facing? Something that interests you. You have experience. What ideas can you generate? What ideas can you generate with other people? Sitting together and having conversations. And for those of us that care for older people, engage them with these questions. We are in a world where, for example, the climate crisis seems to be, and this could be wrong, but it looks like younger people are embracing the challenge more strongly and teaching us a lot. But what do the older people think? How might we approach them? And so these cross-generational conversations, not to exclude them from our questions, to take them seriously. It may not be that. Also, you may be living with somebody and you are working on a project. The older person could be totally not aware of what you are doing, but you talk with them about what you are doing. They have ideas, they have questions, they take a lot of interest, and that is good both for them and for us, both for you and for them. And give them the feedback of the progress you are making, and it enriches the process, even in our mission or in various things that we are engaged with. Another thing that helps is to develop tactile or other artistic engagements, a little bit like the writing, but I put together here the learning of a new language. New languages are, if you ask me, very difficult to learn. And so why are we trying to make life so difficult for older people? Or to work on their hands, to weave baskets, or to paint or such thing. Why? Because it helps the brain to keep making those connections. And very often, it is in making those connections that we stay agile. So it may not be language learning for its own sake, or that you are going to be a missionary in China, so you are learning Mandarin. No, but you could learn Mandarin and see ways of using it, even if it's not perfect. But the main purpose is to keep our brains well exercised and, challenged, so that they keep well, because it's a question of use it. Most of our body, it's a question of use it or lose it. Yeah? So if we can do something like this, or join young people in learning a language, it gives them encouragement, some bits of amusement, and we have some benefits to reap from that. When we are supporting aging people, we need to be mindful of their values and to respect them as much as possible, even their perception of efficacy, because you don't want to spiral them downwards because you are pushing them so hard because you know what's good for them. Again, it's an empathetic journey. It is a journey where we are, we have seen, I think we all have seen care for the aged, which I hope does not belong to any of our religious communities and any of our communities for that matter, where we care for the aged in a kind of impersonal way. It's like, like you might care for even children, that has sometimes been the character. But certain age people, they have developed their values, etc. We want to connect with them, we want to respect them. I think we are pretty good at that, but just to underscore that. So positive aging is about building resilience, it's about personal development, it's about adaptability. And the more we are aware of it ourselves as we age, and the more we are together with others in the same process. So it's not just about keeping physical well-being, feeding well. It's about much more. It's about happiness. It's about adaptation. It's about participation as much as possible. So we need to ask to desire more, if you like, to ask more out of out of more, not more work, but more goodness. Expect more benefits for them and with them, so that then we can actually aim for higher, aim for more than just survival and being clean and being, etc. So maintaining an optimistic outlook is linked to improved health and greater life satisfaction. And if people have life satisfaction, they are likely to have, a better function of the brain because they are open. Yeah, we shall be what this is what one of the theories of positive psychology speaks about, the broaden and build theory. When people are well, they are having positive affect. They feel well about themselves or about their reality. It helps them to keep open to learn, open to question, and they feel safe, and so their brain is going to be engaged as they are learning. Of course, we talked about people, younger adults do not think that they will get old, but middle-aged adults, old age is at the door. So we can start preparing early and making sure that our conversations and our engagement on values is on board even as we prepare, because old age needs preparation. Yeah, we need to anticipate that we are going to be in a situation, we may end up being in a situation where we need somebody else's support. So they speak about giving the power of attorney for our property or bank accounts to someone else, or preparing to see how might that be negotiated, so it doesn't become a point of argument between your children when you are not in a position to actually make a worthwhile contribution to that conversation. So making sure your values are being sewn into the preparation for old age, which hopefully will happen. Caring for the aging brain, therefore, one of the things we do and do well, I think in Africa we've done well, but many cultures, is cognitive stimulation activities, storytelling, allowing or enabling enabling older people to tell their stories. And we may have to create, for example, objects. I think we had an example in the last presentation, I think in the video, where an object like pictures can become an opportunity for older people to speak. And when we stimulate their memory, they are able to experience themselves positively. But guess what? We also learn at deeper levels from them what matters, what has been the source of their resilience, as we see what is meaningful for them. Feeling relevant, anything that can help. We find that as people grow older, the intelligence for very many things, fluid intelligence, may no longer be so sharp. But they can develop crystallized intelligence. That is intelligence that is related to a specific thing. And they can learn so much. And sometimes some studies seem to show that actually that gets even higher. So keeping an interest, helping them to keep an interest and to move, for example, to commercialize some of their products, no matter how small, or to keep at it. Those are good things for the brain. Painting, singing old songs so that they are part and parcel of it. Dancing, very powerful, because it coordinates the brain and the hearing and the body. Those are good things for older people. So again, to encourage them and to bring them, like the music that mattered to them in their day, it should not be completely out of our liturgy or out of our I always tell my students how I will never forget, because this happened to me when I was a child, that I used to go to church and the old ladies, we used to sing in those days. You're going to be able to guess my age when you hear what I said just now. We used to go to church, and most of the songs, I did not find the Latin mass, but I found Latin tunes of songs in Kikuyu. So the Our Father, for example, would be sung in the Latin tune, but it is in Kikuyu. And I remember some numbers of old ladies. I don't remember the men for some reason, or there were not that many. But in any case, sitting in the church, looking tired, looking old, there was one particular lady, she never left my mind. I was never too sure she could even see. She looked like she was blind, but because they just sat there and they looked really, as we say, wezward. And then there came a time in the 80s when we started having Kikuyu tunes for liturgy. So I'll never forget when the Litany of Our Lady was sung in Kikuyu tune, in the rhythm of the Kikuyu traditional music. And suddenly these old ladies stood up and in the church, and there was energy, and I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know they could even. And I was a child. I'm looking at them and thinking, I didn't know they could even dance. The point is, it gave them a lease of life. That should not be something that we have, we have to almost beg for, to have that come on board. Those of us privileged to care for older people, let's find them those things that really light up their lives, and they will mine out of themselves the joy that they can share with us. Okay, I would like to, first of all, to move towards taking a break. I don't know how you are doing for time, sister, but also to ask you, before you go for the break, let's reflect a little bit. Are there some things you've seen older people do better as they grow older than they did when they were young? Or as an older person, stuff that you are now doing, you find you are able to do more easily, more joyfully than older people, than when you were younger. And what could be contributing? What could be the reason? What are the advantages? To what do you attribute this advantage? So I want to ask you, are you aware of things that you do better now as you grow older, or you've seen older people do? In the meantime, sister, is there any question as we respond to the question on the slide ahead of our break? Sister Kunata?
Let me check about this one that answers on what we are discussing about.
Okay, there's a question from Sister Lucy Sasso. If a sister is over 70 years, she drives well, can she be advised to stop or make her understand not to drive? I wouldn't be for advising her to stop. It's not an easy question. The point is to accompany her. When you say she drives well, she drives well. Let's let her drive. Let's accompany her. Let's But if there comes a time when we begin to doubt their judgment, then we have to begin to give that feedback Perhaps a good thing to do right now while she's driving well is to give her that feedback that she drives well, that, so that it increases her sense of safety. And then when we begin to say that it's not okay or something is not okay, or did you notice this, then she'll be more welcoming, more open. I think we have to do a lot more in making our communities and our families and places where people feel safe to give feedback. And one of the ways to do that is to give positive feedback generously, so that when we must give some negative feedback, we used to say this about children and parenting, that we should give a lot of positive feedback and very little, or at least a kind of, a huge positive feedback and very little of, negative. We have to give negative feedback. We must increase the positive feedback to make people feel safe. And I think we need to do that for all ages and make our places, our communities, our workplaces, places where people experience warmth, welcome, safety, and that with these people I'm okay. I could have my challenges and I will not be in trouble. Lois says your experience is that many grandmas are good drivers as compared to younger generation. You have a mentor who is 81 and she still drives and is a good driver. Good. Thank you for sharing that, Lois. Is it just me? I can't see the slides. My God. Was that only Lucy or was that everybody? Hello?
I am seeing myself.
No, I think it was only me who couldn't see, but I started seeing later.
It got sorted. Thank you.
Yeah, you can see down there that I could see.
Okay, sorry. I am only seeing a few. I'm having to use two screens, so I'm jumping. I couldn't see this while I was presenting because that time I'm on another screen. Sorry about that. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Any questions that people have? Our sister has said over there, please type them in. And if someone else, if you're unable to keep the steering, Sister Aquinata, you may hand that over to someone else. I hope you can still do it because I'm not able to do both. Women seem to be doing well in old age than men. I'm not sure that there is a scientific explanation to this. I didn't see any in my reading, Sister Regina. I didn't see any explanation to say why women would be doing better cognitively than men. Perhaps some people say that women engage a lot, and so if you are engaged.
There's somebody who was
Sister Coletta. Sister Coletta. Okay, and then relating with difficult people, stakeholders is easier with age. It seems experience plays a factor. You are more welcoming, accommodative of different temperaments. True. This is what we are saying. Perhaps we are less unsafe, but not for everybody, obviously. Yeah, but thanks for the observation, Lauaki. Yes. I see older people being more patient. I think they have seen it all. Sister Lucy says they have seen it all. Yes. Sometimes they are more patient. Sometimes they are no longer interested. As Father said last time, they have lost. They are no longer. They're not interested in as many things as we may be. Not all of them, obviously. We've seen some older people who track everything down, everything that goes on in the house. Their family, they know what happened, who came, who went, who came with who, and that kind of thing. And sometimes we can feel, as we say, somehow about that kind of thing. Yeah, but maybe they are bored. Maybe we are not engaging them positively enough. Maybe, I don't know. Every case is different. Yeah. I don't argue as much as I used to. Okay. I want to appreciate that as we grow old, outings are recommended. Yes. Yes, if we can, by all means, let's get out and let's get the fresh air, different experiences. Yeah. And of course, not everyone is waiting to be taken out. We are old. Some of us are older, but we still can do that for ourselves, so long as we make sure we are safe. Okay. I can see the slides. Catherine, just leave the meeting and join again. Okay. More patience, e.g., taking longer to complete tasks, lower stress from an accomplished daily. Okay, yes. So you find yourself, one of the positive things that you're observing about yourself is you have more patience, taking longer to complete tasks, so but you are patient to complete it well. That's interesting. A very, very interesting nuance there, because sometimes, Catherine, thank you for this, because sometimes we are so mindful that it's taking us longer and we lose it. But you are observing that it's taking me longer, but I am patient. And perhaps I learn more doing it. There's a nuance there. And that's one of the advantages of old age, even in terms of ideas. We can develop a greater sense of nuance. So that things are not so much black and white or right and wrong, and all. We are able to see possible faces of one's reality. Lower stress and accomplished daily tasks from an accomplished. Yes, you may go to bed having not completed a task, but you can live with it. Whereas when we were younger, we wouldn't want to do that. We would feel so stressed. We have lots of stress hormones. Working with the hands, knitting, crochet. Thank you very much for sharing. As one grows older, there is more accepting of others, especially those rejected by society, such as alcoholics. More compassion, Jane, I suppose. We begin to see ourselves in the other, even in very unlikely others. That we can find experience a kindred spirit in someone who is very much unlike us, and it's a grace of compassion which can come with old age, but again not automatically, or we just have become more understanding. I'm able to excuse people's mistakes more easily than before. Secondly, with age, I realize people with silent struggles that I may not know. You are able to imagine reality is not just the one face you're looking at. You know that they may have struggles that you are not familiar with, that you don't know. There's a lot of homelessness. And mind you, all these things you are putting there are cognitive consciousness, right? An ability to kind of expand your bandwidth beyond the black and white, the right and wrong, the rules. Huh? This is what some of the components of wisdom are. Yeah. There's a lot of hopelessness in the aged, especially when they grow older. They are more calm and accommodative. Yeah, I don't know whether those two go together, Regina, whether you meant that as two different ideas or not.
I meant homeless.
Oh,
I meant homeless.
Okay, they are more homely. They feel more at home with themselves and perhaps with the world. Yes. This morning I was listening to somebody saying that, I mean, it's a perspective, I don't share it, but this person was saying that the planet, the human societies have always been actually much, much more violent than they are now. I mean, the more commonly understood notion is that violence has increased multiply in the 20th century, and the 21st century doesn't look like it's going to be any better. I think the breakdown of societies, even at lower levels, not just at the macro levels, amounts to higher levels of violence, even in the homes, in the community, sense of unsafety, and a lot of trauma. But as we grow older, maybe we become able to survive and know that other people will pull through. It may not be as we might expect. So you can see how there is an overlap between also the socio-emotional elements and the cognitive, because they are interwoven. Now that I'm older, very young, 49, Caroline, I find that a greater ability to pause, listen deeply, and respond with calmness. Something I often struggled with when I was younger. You are so lucky to achieve that at 49. I'm delighted for you. When I felt the need to react quickly and to prove myself. Yes, when I was in my 20s, I had a senior person say, there is nothing to prove. And I was like, oh my God, what's that all about? We just live life. We be generous. We give all that we can and hope, we don't have to, we are not in competition with anyone. You can come to a point like that. You don't need to prove yourself. You feel safe. As we grow older, we see our own fragility, and therefore we become more compassionate towards the preciousness of life. I want to say, Jane, you may mean also compassion towards others as we understand our own. If we look back with a bit of judgment, we will be aware that we ourselves don't necessarily meet the mark, if there, whatever the mark is. But for the grace of God, here we are and doing what we can. So compassion. I can now embrace silence without feeling anxious. Wow, that's a terrific achievement, Caroline. And I'm more at peace with not having all the answers. That is extremely beautiful. I try very hard as an educator to get my students to connect to their questions. And younger people want answers. They want only to deal with questions for which they can quickly find answers. It is a factor of aging and good cognitive aging to be able to stay with questions and have kind of answers that are not complete, but we are still searching. So it's a beautiful gift. It's certainly a cognitive, not understanding everything, and sometimes that also goes, of course, into the realm of the spiritual, where we have to live under the sense of mystery, and we let it be. I also find it. Yes.
It's our break is over.
Over. No, we are going for break. We'll take the break, sister.
We are going for break.
Yes.
For 15 minutes.
Yes. We want us to go right now?
Yeah, but people still want to get their answers as you are reading their comments in the chat.
Maybe you can do quicker, or what do you suggest, sister?
Yes. We move faster so that.
Okay, you go for it. Actually, I was doing it because you were not doing it. I thought you had a problem with your mic or something. So please.
It wasn't coming on my side. That's why.
Okay, I hope now it's coming.
Now flowing. Yeah.
Take us through, please, and I will comment at the end.
Thank you. More patience, e.g., taking longer to complete tasks, longer stress from unaccomplished daily tasks, enjoying working with hands like knitting and crocheting, etc. As one grows older, more accepting of others, especially those rejected by society, such as alcoholics. Josephine says, I am unable to excuse people's mistakes more easily than before. With age, I realize people have silent struggles that I may not know. And then
we were a bit ahead of that, by the way. We had read all those. If you could move a little further down.
That is loose. I no longer. Is that okay? Attribute.
Okay, go on.
I attribute these advantages first and foremost to God's grace through time and experience, life's journey, with its joys, mistakes, losses, and victories, have been my greatest teacher. Secondly, I gratitude the wisdom that comes with aging, not just growing older, but choosing to grow deeper. My prayer life has matured and become more contemplative, and I draw strength from scripture and the lives of the saints in a way I didn't fully grasp before. Community living has also shaped me. Living closely with other sisters over the years has taught me compassion. patience, and the value of interdependence. I have learned from the elderly sisters who walked before me how to suffer with grace, how to age with dignity, and how to laugh at myself. My mom is 84 and keeps saying, while driving other vehicles, lights are too bright for her eyes. Or she says her specs are weak. Yet years ago, she was told she has cataracts and refused to have removed. How can we help her? She should be removed the cataracts. I am more patient than before, a better listener, and does not react to reactions in a hurry, but are able to evaluate matters, then respond accordingly. Giving and helping is more meaningful. I do it without expecting something back, and it gives me joy and meaning.
Thank you, sister. Thank you. There is not much to add.
That was good.
And a lot of what has been said will also be picked up, I'm sure, in the last session, because a lot of it goes in the spiritual line, in the integration. But just to say about the cataracts, maybe then she need not drive, because we don't force her to have her cataracts removed unless she sees the value, obviously. Yeah, and anyway, some other people may have other views. Sister, I suggest we take that break.
Yes.
Yeah. So over to you. Please guide us.
You.
How many minutes can we be away?
15.
15 minutes. Okay. Thank you, friends. I really am grateful for your patience.
We are coming back at 5. Exactly at 5, we shall be there.
Nakwambia zilikuwa zinakuja ndio maana alikuwa amezisoma. Mimi ni network. But zake zilikuwa zinakuja. She was reading the chat. Pia mimi nilikuwa nazipata chat. So sijui mbona zile zilikuwa zinapanda. Kabisa. Basi unaona je alikuwa ashasoma hizo questions tulisoma. They were coming in for us. Yetu mimi yangu iko kuona.
You cannot be able to update the Q&A. You know now, before you are talking about hearing the air, I don't know what was. Yeah. Yes. We are having a break. When you switch at 15, we shall call them back. Haikuwa inakuja kwamba hata niko na mahali hata matia yake haikuwa inakuja kwamba hiyo inakuja. That's why I was like, we are not getting it. Because yes. Yote, the chat was open, but haikuwa inakuja. tuko na magari kwa kwake haiko inakuja. Lakini inacha inakuja sasa. I think it was early. Okay, thanks.
She's teaching very well.
Yes. Thank you. Asante.
Very good. She's good at it. She's not so much like me. Selvam was very technical, but I thought really simple. This one is down to earth.
Remember this is social. And she's talking about the life. But you know, Selvam was talking about things they absorb technical and social. Science is very hard. Until you break the science, you can't so someone can understand. Yeah.
But there are not so many people. They don't have it.
They'll just help.
Like the telephone one.
This one, they were only here, they only 60. They will remove me and you, they only 55. They can't be more than the girl. Even the other time.
Yeah.
They were 90 last time.
I think they can't choose. But if I notice some people in the post,
That's what then. Like our students, quite a number of them are. Sister Agnes, Sister Lucy, Agnes, Josephine, those are the people who are just putting their speech.
I'm not there last time.
I find the thing was feeling sleepy.
For 50. Bishop Sanders had even first for the Selvam didn't send the notes to us. Hello, Dr. Beatrice.
Yes.
Dr. Beatrice, welcome.
Asante.
15 minutes are over. We can continue now.
Thank you.
Thank you too.
Okay.
Welcome. Let us all be attentive. Daktari, you are most welcome.
Asante. Just a
Asante.
moment. It is now that challenge of sharing the screen again.
just be patient. You will do it. You'll get there.
I think all the age we have to be patient. From
you have already done it, so you can't miss to do it again.
Yes, you're going to do that. Yeah.
Yes.
Share screen and then
there you are.
Okay.
Yes, we've gotten it.
Thank you, sister. We want to discuss a little bit about positive psychology scholarship, what it says about aging, more specifically, some of which is just underscoring some of the stuff we said about cognitive aging. And then we will dovetail a little bit more on the wisdom piece, right? So I continue to apologize. I made my slides in PowerPoint, but my computer refuses to present them in PowerPoint, so I'm presenting them in slides, and that's why there is a bit of a shift. But I think you see the essential.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So positive psychology looks at aging as obviously inevitable, but as an opportunity. It's an opportunity to grow, to cultivate wisdom, not just to be wise, but to actually work on wisdom, purpose, and joy. Okay, and joy. With supportive environments, older adults can thrive cognitively and in every other way, contributing richly to society. So, as we have said, because of neuroplasticity, this possibility is there. It's also the concept of cognitive reserve. It shows that mental stimulation activities, as we mentioned before, and education, they protect the brain against age-related declines. So keeping a certain agility in activities in the mind and challenging the mind. Also being meaningfully engaged. If you remember the models of wellness that we looked at last time, we talked about meaning, making meaning, being meaningfully engaged. Enables you actually to be cognitively engaged, and being cognitively engaged then of course produces those kinds of positive outcomes. Optimism, purpose in life, they are linked with research shows they are linked with slower decline if we are optimistic. From the comments we saw there, a lot of you are very optimistic people. Okay, yeah, and patient and all that. Chances are that that supports resilience as well, and it supports making meaning even when you have to shift and change activities. So, meaning in life, positive affect are also associated with better cognitive performance. As I explained, the broaden and build theory, that if people are in good positive affect, they are in a good sense of themselves, they feel good, they feel well, they feel positive, then they are disposed to engage their mind more and that is good for the mind itself, for the brain. It correlates with improved memory, verbal fluency, because even verbal fluency is fed even by such things as reading. You are keeping a certain level of curiosity, and as you read, then you are able to connect with what is going on. You don't check out. So interventions that enhance purpose in life, any kinds of interventions with the older people that enhance purpose in life and meaning are suggested as promising avenues for promoting healthy cognitive aging, right? And we shall look at some of these. Mindfulness and positive emotion boost cognition. Mindfulness meditations or mindfulness exercises have been shown to, as you know, positive psychology promotes mindfulness. One of the simplest things I like to say about mindfulness is that you are only ever in the present moment. You can only be happy in the present moment. So if you are absent from the present moment, then you're missing out. And mindfulness exercises help a person to be aware, to be cognizant of what's going on right around them, which is already an exercise of the mind, of the brain. But it also helps to improve working memory, what we are paying attention to, growth, and decision making and other functions of executive mind. Why? Because it gives us attentional control. It also gives us emotional regulation so that you don't get lost in, when you are not regulated, the emotions may take over and fling you in a direction that you don't want to go. Mindfulness exercises enable you to be more emotionally regulated on the go. And mindfulness exercises can be in a sitting still position, but some of them can be in activity, like in walking, mindful walking, noticing stuff. Noticing emotion or the spectrum of emotions that we go through enables, you cannot control what you do not know, but if you become more aware of it, you become more in charge of it. And that, in turn, feeds cognitive performance. We've talked about the positive emotions, so I'll not spend a time on that. But again, it means that we help ourselves, we help older people to become aware of those positive emotions and to cultivate them, if you like, not to take them for granted. That is why things like gratitude exercises, gratitude journals, gratitude, and it comes sometimes naturally to older people, but it may not. But it's a very good thing to let those emotions take a bigger spectrum of our time. It helps also to build social and physical resources that support long-term well-being, because we begin to realize that the whole of our environment is actually feeding us opportunities. So positive emotions. So I think we have downplayed. I could be my life about you. There has been a downplaying of positive emotions as if they are fickle, as if they don't matter. I am very grateful for positive psychology, really bringing us back to the importance of feeling well, having a positive self-assessment, and really seeking to cultivate that. And we can encourage and help ourselves and older people to do that. So in the business of cultivating wisdom, I found it interesting. This writer, Brackley, is actually writing about the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius of Loyola, where he says that moral norms cannot substitute for practical wisdom. We are talking about wisdom. Yeah, that, the rules and what we must do, they cannot, because life is too rich for that. Older people know that. That's what some of you were saying in the comments. I am able to accommodate different views. I have a sense of nuance. Life is too rich for that. Sometimes we say life is too complicated for that, but this word rich is much better. And when you think of life being rich, you kind of build the appetite for discovering that richness. But I also want to say something that this is not from me. I kind of raked it up out of my memory, but I didn't make it. It says, age alone it does not make us wise. Just growing old doesn't make us wise. And some people would be as bad as to say there is enough old fools around. But wisdom will not come without the experience of life. So you need the life. So the experience of life is already something you have that enables you. It is a resource. I think it's so important that we go back. We are in a modern culture, or rather contemporary culture, that tends to think like, let's move with the next fashion. Let's move with the next fashion. They don't know what we are doing. They are not up to date. But these are people who have lived life. You've got all of your 50 years. Somebody said 49. Somebody says 50, 60, 70. It's experience. Those are resources. And we cannot replace that unless be interested in helping mining the meaning of our lives, the wisdom that has come to us, and feeling that it is part of our responsibility to share that wisdom among ourselves and to build up a legacy of that kind. I'd like us to watch a small video. I think it's not very long. I found it really good, so I try to share it. I think it talks about many elements of positive aging, but you will see that almost all of them are hooked on cognitive aging. Yeah? Having the ideas and or entertaining the mindset that promotes positive aging. So let's listen to this video.
Successfully. What is the appropriate new metaphor for aging? I've spent the...
Sister, can we hear?
Yes, we can hear.
Yes. Last year researching and writing about this subject, and I have come to find that a more appropriate metaphor for aging is a staircase, the upward ascension of the human spirit, bringing us into wisdom, wholeness, and authenticity. Age not at all as pathology, age as potential. And guess what? This potential is not for the lucky few. It turns out most people over 50 feel better, are less stressed, less hostile, less anxious. We tend to see commonalities more than differences. Some of the studies even say we're happier. This is not what I expected, trust me. I come from a long line of depressives. As I was approaching my late 40s, when I would wake up in the morning, my first 6 thoughts would all be negative. And I got scared. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to become a crotchety old lady. But now that I am actually smack dab in the middle of my own third act, I realize I've never been happier. I have such a powerful feeling of well-being. And I've discovered that when you're inside oldness, as opposed to looking at it from the outside, fear subsides. You realize you're still yourself, maybe even more so. Picasso once said, it takes a long time to become young. I don't want to romanticize aging. Obviously, there's no guarantee that it can be a time of fruition and growth. Some of it is a matter of luck. Some of it, obviously, is genetic. 1/3 of it, in fact, is genetic, and there isn't much we can do about that. But that means that 2/3 of how well we do in the third act, we can do something about. We're going to discuss what we can do to make these added years really successful and use them to make a difference. Now, let me say something about the staircase, which may seem like an odd metaphor for seniors, given the fact that many seniors are challenged by stairs, myself included. As you may know, The entire world operates on a universal law, entropy, the second law of thermodynamics. Entropy means that everything in the world, everything is in a state of decline and decay, the arch. There's only one exception to this universal law, and that is the human spirit, which can continue to evolve upwards, the staircase, bringing us into wholeness, authenticity, and wisdom. And here's an example of what I mean. This upward ascension can happen even in the face of extreme physical challenges. About 3 years ago, I read an article in the New York Times. It was about a man named Neil Selinger, 57 years old, a retired lawyer, who had joined the writers group at Sarah Lawrence, where he found his writer's voice. 2 years later, he was diagnosed with ALS, commonly known as Lou Gehrig's disease. It's a terrible disease. It's fatal. It wastes the body, but the mind remains intact. In this article, Mr. Selinger wrote the following to describe what was happening to him. And I quote, "As my muscles weakened, my writing became stronger. As I slowly lost my speech, I gained my voice. As I diminished, I grew. As I lost so much, I finally started to find myself." Neil Selinger, to me, is the embodiment of mounting the staircase in his third act. Now, we're all born with spirit, all of us, but sometimes it gets tamped down beneath the challenges of life, violence, abuse, neglect. Perhaps our parents suffered from depression. Perhaps they weren't able to love us beyond how we performed in the world. Perhaps we still suffer from a psychic pain, a wound. Perhaps we feel that many of our relationships have not had closure, and so we can feel unfinished. Perhaps the task of the third act is to finish up the task of finishing ourselves. For me, it began as I was approaching my third act, my 60th birthday. How was I supposed to live it? What was I supposed to accomplish in this final act? And I realized that in order to know where I was going, I had to know where I'd been. And so I went back and I studied my first two acts, trying to see who I was then, who I really was, not who my parents or other people told me I was or treated me like I was, but who was I? Who were my parents? Not as parents, but as people. Who were my grandparents? How did they treat my parents? These kinds of things. I discovered a couple of years later that this process that I had gone through is called by psychologists doing a life review, and they say it can give new significance and clarity and meaning to a person's life. You may discover, as I did, that a lot of things that you used to think were your fault, a lot of things that you used to think about yourself, really had nothing to do with you. It wasn't your fault. You're just fine, and you're able to go back and forgive them and forgive yourself. You're able to free yourself from your past. You can work to change your relationship to your past. Now, while I was writing about this, I came upon a book called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was a German psychiatrist who'd spent 5 years in a Nazi concentration camp. And he wrote that while he was in the camp, he could tell, should they ever be released, which of the people would be okay and which would not. And he wrote this: "Everything you have in life can be taken from you except one thing: your freedom to choose how you will respond to the situation. This is what determines the quality of the life we've lived, not whether we've been rich or poor, famous or unknown, healthy or suffering. What determines our quality of life is how we relate to these realities, what kind of meaning we assign them, what kind of attitude we cling to about them, what state of mind we allow them to trigger." Perhaps the central purpose of the third act is to go back and to try, if appropriate, to change our relationship to the past. It turns out that cognitive research shows when we are able to do this, it manifests neurologically. Neural pathways are created in the brain. You see, if you have, over time, reacted negatively to past events in people, neural pathways are laid down by chemical and electrical signals that are sent through the brain. And over time, these neural pathways become hardwired. They become the norm, even if it's bad for us because it causes us stress and anxiety. If, however, we can go back and alter our relationship, revision our relationship to past people and events, neural pathways can change. And if we can maintain the more positive feelings about the past, that becomes the new norm. It's like resetting a thermostat. You know, it's not having experiences that make us wise. It's reflecting on the experiences that we've had that makes us wise and that helps us become whole, brings wisdom and authenticity. It helps us become what we might have been. Women start off whole, don't we? I mean, as girls, we're feisty. Yeah, who says? We have agency. We are the subjects of our own lives. But very often, many if not most of us, when we hit puberty, we start worrying about fitting in and being popular. And we become the subjects and objects of other people's lives. But now, in our third acts, it may be possible for us to circle back to where we started and know it for the first time. And if we can do that, it will not just be for ourselves. Older women are the largest demographic in the world. If we can go back and redefine ourselves and become whole, this will create a cultural shift in the world, and it will give an example to younger generations so that they can reconceive their own lifespan. Thank you very much.
Okay. So I hope that you find Jane Fonda as good as I do. I don't know what you picked up from there, but I hope you can see that there is a lot to do with the cognitive. It is the reflection that we do on our life, not the actual things that happen, that becomes the fodder for the wisdom that we are building. So there is the opportunity. She begins, by the way, at the very beginning. She's speaking to women, it said women, but I hope the gentlemen in the circle can feel that they can relate. I think almost all of us go through that peer pressure that characterizes most of our adolescent and adult lives, where we are kind of trying to fit. But ultimately, you reach a point where you feel called to your authenticity. And it is
you are raising up your hand.
Sorry?
CASAK director is raising up her hand, or what am I seeing? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. We continue.
Yes. So thanks for the comments you're making. People feel free to use the wall.
People are making comments about what we have just seen. The human spirit does not decline. Wow, that is something we all can embark on. Nothing.
And
God
when
is
we are
ever alive in us. That's
just
good.
Comment on the comment that that the human spirit being ever alive. It's interesting in the French language. Sometimes when they think of the mind, they call it spirit. Yeah. So there is again an overlap right there, and obviously we are not reducing spirit to the brain, but it is an exercise of our brain. I mean, we can use our brain to heighten our integration and our wisdom, and go up the staircase insofar as that is possible.
Daktari, somebody is requesting that we repeat the title of the book and the author.
Which book?
I think it is.
Or the TED Talk.
Yes.
The TED Talk is by Jane Fonda, 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 Jane Fonda, Life's Third Act. Life's Third Act. You can watch it again. It's a TED Talk. You can find it on YouTube. Life's Third, as in three. Third Act. Okay.
Yes, you'll share the link with people. Yes, share the link.
Yes. Just give me a moment. I'm getting back to the sharing page. Shares. Okay, this is right. It's actually right in front of you. If you want to take a picture, that's the link to that video.
Can you take that?
Okay.
Thank you. People
it's also on the, for those of you that want to get a little deeper with the explanation around it, it's on the Positive Psychology website. Positive Psychology website. But anyway, go to YouTube and you can find it. So what are we saying about wisdom? And some of that is said by her and some of it is reflections around. So I just thought it's a good one for helping us to integrate.
Yeah.
Deep understanding of life and human nature it helps us to reach that wisdom. But it takes reflection. Somebody was saying, yes, I spend more time reflecting on my life, perspective taking. When we talk about character strengths in positive psychology, we talk about wisdom as one of the virtues. And the character strengths that define wisdom include perspective, a sense of perspective. Like that story you hear of the lady riding a bus and she's standing and, kind of having a raw deal and and somebody's telling her, but you should be complaining. They shouldn't be pushing you around. And she says, in the bigger scheme of things, this is not such a big deal. Sometimes we make so much fuss over life and we get a sense of perspective. We can get a sense of perspective, but you have to choose to make reflections, to reflect on the experience in our life, to learn where we are going. Wisdom develops over the lifespan, obviously. It is not something that just comes in old age. But in positive psychology, wisdom comes also from adversity. I think most of us, hardly anyone is spared adversity. But difficulties, challenges in our lives that we have gone through, including, as she said, Jane Fonda talked about rereading your life and beginning to see some of what you thought was your fault or you thought was whose fault, but just getting a different way of looking at things. Yeah. So intentional self-reflection is one of the ingredients of cultivating wisdom, reviewing your life on a day-to-day basis, but also reviewing our life as a biography or an autobiography, if you like, looking back on our lives. Reflecting on failures, reflecting on transition, reflecting on the suffering, and then reflecting also on growth and the moments that enabled growth and some of the paradoxes in our lives, like the guy who can no longer write, but he has much more to say, and he has no longer the use of his voice, but he has gained. So the active choices that we make can help us to reach, like the daily journaling. It's one of the things that helps daily or by week, twice a week, or but the practice of journaling is one of those that can really help you cultivate wisdom. Because journaling, it is supposed to be non-judgmental. It's just what's flowing with me, what happens, how did I feel, what occurred to me, what are the thoughts that are passing through my mind. Because one of the things that limits wisdom is moral impositions and judgment. Okay, so, but sometimes we actually experience moral dilemmas. Many people know the questions of moral dilemmas, right? And they are great for, they're difficult to go through, but they are great for filtering wisdom through them when we have to choose between very difficult things. And we begin to find there's a lot of gray areas. There are many shades of truth, and truth is not, and I know that there are people who have difficulty hearing that, truth can be relative, if you like, personal truth, And it's relative to a whole lot of things, including our history, our journey, where we are going, where we think we are coming from, and our purpose in life. Dialogue and storytelling can be an opportunity for that. Imagine that some of the older sisters or older members of the family, men or women, dialoguing with them and letting them talk about how they experienced past experiences, giving them a chance. Sometimes I want to say that as a person who lives in Africa and who has seen the challenge we have of using Western languages. Western languages, just give me a moment, please. Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay.
There's a chat. Somebody says something about what you have just commented, Daktari.
Yeah.
That we have freedom to choose how we respond to the circumstances we encounter. Let us use this freedom to choose positively. Thank you.
Let us use that freedom to choose positively. Yeah. But choosing positively is not predetermined. It is something we engage as a process of reflection. Huh? And then, thank you very much, Caroline. I'm giving us evidence-based strategies for cultivating wisdom. So journaling would be one of them. Mindful meditation, we have already talked about. Cultivating emotional regulation in various ways, because when we are emotionally regulated, we are likely to be more present. We are likely to, to seek perspective. Yeah. Mentorship and generativity. Remember old age or aging, the senior years. They are the time when we are wanting to share ourselves. But how do we do that? Seek opportunities to mentor others, to work with others, to appreciate younger people, and to bring your perspective on their experiences. Be open to it. Don't close off. Don't say these young people are too unwise or too whatever it is that we might say. Yeah, seeking out those opportunities. But those of us who care for them, creating those opportunities, not as tokenism, but as a genuine engagement of the older persons, and listening to their views, and not necessarily implementing absolutely as they say, but having their input in our processes. It helps to mentor. But the older persons can take greater interest in what younger people are doing, and that creates legacy, because your input comes into play in what they are thinking about. It may not be evident to you immediately, but we are not the chief architect of the planet. But this becomes an input that you don't withdraw or take with us to the grave. We bring it on in a non-judgmental and open and appreciative way. So there is no substitute for caring for one another when we are doing these things. So dialoguing on values, like participation in moral reasoning groups, which are not about arguing. Our world does not know how to have moral reasoning conversations, reasoning together. We have very hard positions. We know what is right. They know they are all wrong. We are right. And that divides not just the world, but it divides us and them, the young and the old, men and women, etc., etc. But just creating opportunities for conversations across divides, respecting each other's minds, honoring. This is something we need to relearn. And many cultures perhaps may not have that, but it is a wisdom that's coming to us from many traditions as well. Of course, engaging with literature, because that's also it gives us sometimes some people have said, for example, you want to understand an event, and it is in literature that you get to understand it better when you see the stories of people, what they might have gone through. Ngugi wa Thiong'o died recently, and it is, if you read Weep Not Child, or you read The River Between, sometimes you understand how colonialism affected our people more deeply than anything you can read in any history book. To have us, I wish we could have back an appreciation of literature. But one of the things that women like to do, and I can encourage even us cross-generationally to do, is to read, to have reading groups, like have a book, a reading group, okay, where, once every 2 weeks we meet and discuss that chapter, and what did you see and what did you not see. It's fun, but it also cultivates wisdom. There are opportunities, and we all begin to see life from many different perspectives. Yeah. So, what are some of the benefits? Some of the benefits of wisdom for older people. We develop humility. Yeah, I saw it quite a bit in your comments. Wisdom is deeply tied to intellectual humility. Yeah, realizing that other people have a view. They may actually have something to add to what we are. Knowing the limits, we are also limited. Yeah? And that can come through compassionate action, being engaged with other people, being able to see where principles apply and where they are limited, because frequently principles also reach their limit, and we are willing to go into those difficult conversations. Wisdom also is a protection against adversity. That not that the adversity will not come, but we will be able to face it with a greater wholeness. It will not be so absolute. It's not the only thing that's crowding our lives. I have often been very impressed when parents survive and even thrive after having to bury a child. And you can see there's a lot of work that goes into that, and a lot of surrender, a lot of walking through, because if they don't walk through, and there is an intellectual dimension to that, literally knowing that we do not understand, but we wait, we stand in that space. Other benefits, it's a pathway to flourishing, obviously, because as you know, if you use the PAMA model, for example, positive relations, engagement, relationships, meaning in purpose, accomplishment, wisdom will serve those things, each of those things. Yeah, if we are we have cultivated compassion that enables us to bear with someone who is different from us, we are likely to cultivate positive relationships, and that is an ingredient of well-being, even when things are difficult. To be engaged, as we talked about, being in certain activities, I think you can make all these up for yourself. That literally, that wisdom contributes to flourishing. The more we have sense of meaning, the more we have sense of being relevant, it helps us. Wisdom also builds resilience. I'm very glad that Jane Fonda already mentioned Viktor Frankl, whose book is a classic on meaning-centered living. No matter what the circumstance, not the what that happens, but something about the way we extract meaning out of whatever experience that there is, and we grow the courage and the resilience necessary to do so. The literature I was looking at says that this whole question of meaning-centered living resonates quite a bit with people who are older. It's through living life that you discover that, a whole lot actually doesn't matter. And what really matters is literally is deeper than the events. And yet we have to be in the events to be able to find that. So having a sense of purpose is linked to better health, and being able to adapt to life's challenges, and to know that we can survive. Because we have also this self-fulfilling prophecies. Our expectations set us up to have certain experiences. Some of us believe, if this happened to me, I could not survive. But having lived life and being able to review it, and we begin to realize that, yeah, we can survive, and not only survive, we can even thrive, and thrive with others, not just by ourselves. Of course, we talked about the plasticity. When we are talking about the fluid intelligence diminishing, perhaps, but the crystallized intelligence and focused intelligence may actually be cultivated and become something that mediates our cultivation of wisdom. As we do that, it stimulates our minds and gives us better mental health. That I think it's like closing the circle. The intergenerational wisdom. I like us to believe that the wisdom or the experiences we've had are not just about ourselves. So if we make the best of them, we have a heritage to share, a legacy to hand on to the next generation. So the desire to give back, and if we are willing to volunteer, we end up, building the next generation, having a sense of purpose and meaning as we go forward in life. And so while all these things have to be done, I just want to finish with one last comment, that they cannot be done in absentia from other people. We need community. Community is central to actually healthy cognitive aging. It is not something we can do in isolation. So if we want to support older people, even if they don't live with us, maybe a parent, etc., we want them to take up healthy lifestyle. We need to be in frequent contact with them, not abandon them and just give them a list of rules. Didn't you do this, etc.? As we know with children, so with all of us, frequent contact. If they have a sense that they are achieving something, we are encouraging them. There is a chance that they will persist in doing that. Setting realistic expectations, having enjoyment of the activity. So there is such a big spectrum of possibilities of activities. We should not tie people down to the very unpleasant, especially when they are older. Sometimes we have to put up with unpleasant experiences in medical world, etc. For the rest of the time, let's have enjoyment, activities that we enjoy, and still build up the community and build ourselves up. Having a sense of responsibility, having a sense of social support, all these build up to cognitive strength, cognitive aging. And so while we may be experiencing diminishment, we may actually be making great mileage in our cognitive well-being if we engage positively. So that's what I had to share with us. And so I would like to check whether we have any comments. Comments are very welcome, by the way, as well as any questions as we move to closure. Sister.
Yes. If we check on our chat, Jacqueline says, we had talked about the freedom, but this Josephine, who says joys of sharing negative outcome in a positive way to allow improvement and self-reflection individually and collectively. I think she made that comment when we are talking about the sharing of wisdom.
The choice of sharing negative outcome in a positive way. One of the things we learn, of course, we are never sure of the results We can only be taking responsibility for the actions to the best of our ability. And sometimes we will fail. Sometimes we will discover that we were actually wrong. Are we able to share negative outcomes in a positive way? Or are we able also to, of course, accommodate negative outcomes of other people, but also accompany them to also mine meaning, mine learning out of those experiences? That takes a lot of courage, but it takes a lot of first self-work and the confidence to know that, failure does not define us. Failure does not define us. And, a lot of this wisdom is counter-cultural, counter to the current culture of competition, current culture of winning and what have you. So people feel obliged to hide their failures, and fake it till you make it is not even something strange to us anymore. People actually say this even in public. But we know that it doesn't lead to wisdom and neither to peace. So working with our mind as our friend, even as it loses certain capacities, and discovering that it is actually a wonderful brain and mind for achieving what it is we came to do. But we have to keep discovering it. It is never on a script somewhere. Thank you.
There's something, Maggie is saying something. How do different personalities impact our aging gracefully process, e.g. being a perfectionist? And then another one, in your experience, what are some effective ways communities can foster intergenerational relationships so that younger and older sisters mutually enrich one another in daily life? There are two.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe I start with the second one about intergenerational One of the things, of course, is time, making the time. I would like to hope that I have mentioned a few things that we can do together, but time is one of those things that we say, even with children, with each other, we have to make the time and to be together. But also we need to be creative in how we spend that time together. People can be together and of course they are on their phones or they are just watching the television. It may not help us very much. So we need to think of, for example, recreation that is engaging rather than just passive. Engaging recreation brings generations together. A sense of humor, trying to really to understand each other's worlds. I can imagine asking people to enact. I think I started saying this and didn't complete it when I was saying that sometimes the Western languages are very deficient for us, but we can act something out. If you have 2-3 sisters who lived through an experience, the rest of you have only ever heard about it, and yet that's part of the congregational history. That's how part of how the congregation is, reflects or is becoming itself. Suppose we have these sisters enact how they experienced it, or these are things. I don't know when we have chapters or big meetings. Do we have space that is not just token? I hope you understand what I mean by token. We're just allowing one older person to do this one. We're just kind of being representative, etc. I think we can do more, but you'd have to think creatively. Like somebody was saying, bring in symbols and talk around them. Have us engaged, and then some of us are storytellers, others are writers of stories. I hope that some of our communities, we are writing the histories of our communities, and they can be the oral histories of our communities. The older people may not write, but they may be able to tell. And as they tell and you write, then they review, you are making meaning together. The sky is the limit. The thing is, it needs to be something that matters to you. It needs to be something that matters to you. Now, the question on personality, I want to understand it a little better. I think you're not talking about strictly, there are certain personality types that are people are going to move at different paces. Some people are very stuck in, they may be very insecure. If you're highly neurotic, you may be very insecure and you need things to be perfect in a certain way. Hopefully, as you have grown older, life has hit itself against you enough for you to realize, or you need to review the way life has hit itself against you, so that you're able to say that, you know what, we could actually soften the boundaries and be able to actually find more meaning. Accommodation of such tough personalities or difficult personalities, and creative ways of making them, inviting them to beyond their rigidity is all that you can do, really, because many of these choices are personal. Nevertheless, for us to make those choices, we need safety, and I have chosen myself to keep on trying to be an advocate of creating safe spaces. I think most of our communities, most of our families are not safe spaces. People cannot be themselves. But it begins with each individual to allow people, to actively create safe space so that people can actually be able to let down the guard. And when they let down the guard, when you let down the guard, even you are open to be surprised. But you may find that there is so much you can learn from someone you thought was very rigid. I think creating of safe spaces is what we can do for each other. But what we can do for ourselves, like what Fonda said, review your life. Look how you survived so much, and it wasn't in the context of being so perfect. It wasn't in the context of all your strengths. It was sometimes in the context of just making choices as you went along to the best of your ability. Looking at our own failures, very, very, very helpful, because I have had quite a number of old people tell me how happy they are that their prayer wasn't answered. So at that time they were angry, but they can see how, as they say, when the door was closed, the window that opened was the very best thing that ever happened to them. So again, that's the beauty of old age. You've got your own life as material for learning from, if you're willing to engage with it.
I think that's what we have. What is on the chat? Any question?
Okay.
Any question?
Lucy has her hand up.
Yes.
Kindly let me voice my question. I wanted
to.
I am asking. You have mentioned that you talked about fake till you make it, and you said that some of our communities are not safe places to let down the guards, and I'm now thinking seriously about that. And you said that it would be better to start with me. I would like, if you can, maybe you can, Doctor, you can give me a practical way of being authentic, being me, as a starting point for others. Or rather, how can I make a community a safe place for being one authentic?
Yeah. Allow me to say this, and I don't like that I don't have a better example. One of the worst things that makes our communities and spaces unsafe is gossip. When someone has failed and we are, and they may not be our best friend. Indeed, they may even be someone we are not too happy about. But when they have failed and we are telling the story and relishing it, it may not be in their presence, but that energy certainly wears ourselves down, makes us less of a safe person. But we can choose to be compassionate. We can choose to have our door open to such a person and be willing to listen to their experience and to their pain, even when they are not necessarily the people we like the best. And I think if we had more listening to each other, we may have even less need for a therapy, but that's not tested. But I just think I think that's a lot of what is happening is people are feeling very insecure in a workplace. For example, workplaces are communities. People are with each other most of the waking hours of the day, and if the place is toxic, can I be countercultural? Can I be that person who will not propagate the bad story? Can I be that person who will offer a perspective, even if it is not the favored one, and be willing to say perhaps it needed to be said. Say it safely, say it non-accusatory, but in a way that accommodates other people. We also have to learn, of course, and this is, to learn to own our position and to own our mind. To be able to say, this is what I think, this is for this reason and this reason, and what do you think? And when we lead, of course, we have greater space for that. When we are leaders, it may take a long time for our people to learn that they can speak their mind and they are safe, because many workplaces, we just toe the line of the boss. Otherwise, we will be, the boss is ultimately responsible. We have not created the sense that other people's views are actually welcome. Can our communities be countercultural in that element? Can our employer situations, some religious people run hospitals and schools, and can it be safe spaces? Can they be schools for review of life? Can people fail safely also? Sometimes we have set very high targets, or we have set targets, people don't meet the targets, and they are ashamed, even if they are not fired. If they're ashamed, then we are not going very far with that. So I know I'm jumping around, but the idea being, it is if people are safe, then they are going to be able to become more creative and to be able to tell us where the problems really lie. And older people have the bandwidth, the psychological bandwidth, to accommodate many views. So I'm hoping that if you are principal of a school that your congregation runs, you've got an old sister who is your friend or two with whom you discuss matters of the school in a safe space. And when you hear their views, you may be surprised. What you consider to be the highest value, you might find that, oh, I hadn't thought of that. And, so this is what I mean by safe spaces. Otherwise, we live in silos and watching our back. And that culture can grow even in our church communities, which can be unfortunate.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lucy. Any other clarification? Any other question or comments? Are we comfortable? Have we had something for ourselves?
It would be interesting, sister, if anyone has something they think was a take home, what they think might be worth pursuing to understand a little further. It may not be a question necessarily. That might maximize our shared learning. Is there something you see that you might like to pursue a little further? Or is there a gap that you felt should have been addressed and perhaps...
Regina, somebody has the hand up. Regina, you have your hand up.
Yes, just to appreciate Daktari.
Yeah.
You see, we have a lot of wealth with us within our communities. And sometimes because of the issues of I don't like this one, or our likeness, what we like and dislike, we tend to lose out opportunities actually to grow, as Daktari is saying. So I'm just appreciating the point she's giving us on how to live positively and to improve our wellness, so that at least we can age positively, all of us. Interestingly, when we are young, we don't think we can age. And we think aging is for the ones who have gray hair or anything like that. But unfortunately, you find even those with gray hair, they have much more to put in the life we are living in the convent than those who think they are young and they have potential and they have a lot. With that, I don't mean that we are, no, there is one who has and who doesn't have. It's only that we are gifted differently and able differently. So thank you, Daktari. I want to appreciate that. Mine was to appreciate and encourage my sisters. Can we create safe spaces in our communities so that all of us can feel free and be able to contribute, so that at least each one feels at home. And I think when we feel home, then I think there will be nothing to shake us and we shall grow, because growth is eternal. We keep on growing, we keep on learning. And I think we say, there's somebody who said the illiteracy of the 21st century is not about academic, but about those who can't unlearn and relearn. So I want to assume that we are going to unlearn that which was not improving our positivity, and then we can relearn what we have learned here and more. Thank you very much, Daktari. Thank you, CASAK team.
Thank you. Caroline, you have your hand up. Caroline, you have your hand up.
Yes, I just want to thank Daktari for everything she has presented. It's very inspirational and enlightening. And I'm taking home a lot of things, but I want to highlight one of them that struck me: a growth-oriented mindset. That's what I'm taking home, that aging is not simply about slowing down physically. It's more about spiritual ripening. And it is a shifting from achievement to presence, from doing to being, and from realizing our worth. That it's not in what we accomplish, but in what we are becoming. And I feel that this is an attitude I want to embrace. Maybe I've begun embracing it, and it's an attitude that I pray that each one of us embraces. Thank you very much, Daktari, for your inspirational points. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Sister Tekla, you have your hand up.
Yes,
Sister Tekla.
Yes, sister. First, mine is to thank the doctor for the effort that she has made to take us through the lesson. And I have a question. And my question is, because we are talking of being positive, and most of the time we find that we are always negative. And when it comes that we get somebody to tell us to be positive, and especially when we are in religious sectors, it is already too late for us. So how to cope, and especially when we are aging, knowing that this is what has been infused in me. So how can I manage myself not to act out of that negativity that has been instilled in me?
Thank you. Dr. you said that.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish I knew all the answers, sister, but I am a great advocate of I am a great advocate of starting small. And when there is a will, it is like the direction in which you are looking. If I have been going to Mombasa the whole time and thinking that I am headed to Kisumu, I can't be at Voi and say, I think I've come too far, so I'm not going to change. Then I will never get to Kisumu. I'm mixing my directions, but I'm just saying, if you are going in this direction and you find it is the wrong direction, it's not taking you where you really want to go, you need to make the intention of turning. You need to turn around and start looking at those positive things that are there. And and there are so many. That is why, like, the gratitude journal is a wonderful thing for growing that positive attitude, looking at the things we take for granted in life. There are so many, like the ability to enjoy a meal. One thing is to have a meal, but to enjoy it is an extra benefit. Yeah. Um, yes. Sorry, I have to stop my phone. Excuse me. So I think we need to take the small steps, and if the intention is really serious, you will be surprised how fast you turn. So it's not like it is impossible to change it around. We need to make that option, and I guess from a spiritual perspective, you can also say to seek help of the Spirit to do so, because actually the Christian life fundamentally is a life of joy. It's a life of positivity, in spite of the cross, or through the cross, beyond the cross, but through it, not by avoidance. So basically, it is the grace that the choice, and the efforts to keep finding the good, even in the people we don't like. We can find good, and then we can find ways of appreciating them, so that we begin to bridge. But we have to be authentic. What does not help is pretense, because it just adds bad upon bad, right? So I think it's not that difficult. Once we make the choice, the direction begins to come. We build the new habit, and I think that's what also Jane Fonda was beginning to say. We have the capacity in our makeup to actually move. And like at the very beginning, she says, we are now living like 30 years more than people lived like a century ago, or something like this. So even in our 60s, we may say, I've gone too far. I haven't gone too far. I can turn around and start looking for the beauty in life and sharing it, and cultivating it in others. It can be done.
Thank you, Daktari. And the
Thank
chat
you.
is just people are appreciating. Thank you, Daktari, for informative presentation. Then thank you for presentation insights that are provided, quite reflective. My take to be more embracing, more open across generation. I think we have had a very good time. The presentation was very good. Daktari, thank you for that informative information. And it has really given us deep insights in our mind to understand how we are supposed to journey, how we are supposed to turn around, and how we are supposed to interrelate with the generation as we grow up, as long as we can create space and we are open to each other. I think we are very grateful. Thank
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity, and wish you a very good evening.
Before we part, remember we are having Daktari in 2 weeks' time again. After next week, after fortnight, the following 2 weeks, Daktari will be with us again. And we are looking forward to hearing from you again once more. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you so much.
We pray, glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit. In the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you, everybody. God bless. Have a
Welcome.
blessed evening. Thank you.
Thank you, sister.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How do you communicate